cloud. And I am going to mute. If you're not talking, I'm going to go ahead and mute people. My name's Chuck Fall, and and this is a meetup of a roundtable discussion for Green Party, Pacific Green Party members to discuss the kind of what I call the structure in the Green Party, and it stems from there's a long history to this, but it had a major blowout with what some of us are calling an electoral theft of the February convention. This involved 39 votes being essentially discarded. Lynn Benton County on Moss was dismissed from the count count. We can talk about that or not, but the issue is there has been a break. I'm active in the Green Liberty Caucus, and my caucus was decertified. The Lane chapter was decertified. These all came out of that February convention, and that is part of what again I'm calling the rupture. And the question for us today is repairing that and getting back onto some kind of program where the Green Party, I suppose, would function as a kind of united front of diverse elements that we all essentially bring together in a community of tolerance and solidarity for change and improvement and activism and so on. So that's my introductory remark. If people, I'm inclined to we're going to pass the talking stick. I think we should probably kind of, in our own mind, think 3-4 minutes to make a statement. And at some point after 5 minutes, and it would be nice to have I'll kind of keep informal time, and others can as well. We will give you an alert and say can you wrap it up? Does that sound fair and reasonable to people, or should we be completely open here? Okay, thumbs up from Michael Sonnleitner. Michael Sonnleitner, can we go to you? Are you willing to give a reflection and remarks about our roundtable conversation? If you want to pass to others, you may, or you can just share and we'll go to you.
I'm happy to break the ice, and that will allow other people to appear to be more wise than I am, probably because they are.
Fair enough.
I was at the February conference. I have no problem criticizing the throwing out of the votes. Mm-hmm. What I have a problem with, and I think this is a cultural issue, not a policy issue, is the disposition of too many Greens on different sides of different issues, engaging in personal attacks. My own style of Green orientation is inspired by, among others, Mohandas Gandhi. Gandhi had a principle which I found extremely important in my political and personal life. For example, while I was serving on the board of directors at Portland Community College as a trustee for 8 years, I was a lone voice, often marginalized by others on the board. Bottom line is, I had to be very careful, and I was, never to personally attack them. I opposed their actions, I opposed their positions, but I did not ever call them by name anything. Obstructionist, racist, homophobe, none of that. Because when we engage in personal attacks, we alienate those who we may also be able to learn from. They turn off. Most of us turn off if we're personally attacked. So I think we need to engage in a cultural revolution amongst ourselves to be very careful to propose positive ways forward without condemning any person or faction. To me, that is the only way to healing. And if we listen to one another, and I mean, we all need to listen to those we disagree with, we can find common ground. I have complete faith that we can find common ground and move forward. But a culture of attack, retaliation, retaliation is simply going to get us red cheeks and no particular movement forward. I want a cultural revolution within ourselves, and that includes the people within this meeting. It's not a matter of policy, it's a matter of attitude. Thank you.
I think that's a great I think that's a great start of things for us to consider and put out there for as imperative for moving forward. And I appreciate what Michael has just shared. We have a hand up from Sabrina. Michael, is there anything else you want to just to wrap the bow on that, or should we go to others?
No, we can discuss the color of the bow later.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to take the spotlight off of Michael, and Sabrina, please share. Your hand is up. You have to unmute.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was just wondering, to ask a question of Michael, what is more of a personal attack than throwing out the votes of people, and how does he negotiate that, in his mind according to his principles?
Michael, you go ahead and answer that.
Yeah. Well, briefly, when I am personally attacked, whether it was during the 8 years on the board, where among other things, I was personally censured at one point by the other board members, my response is to not retaliate. To be the change I want to see in the world, I need to try to be the person I would like other people to be. So if I am wronged, it's proper for me to call out the wrong. But it's, for me, counterproductive to attack the person who may be engaged in what I perceive to be wrong. Make a distinction between the person and their actions. Respect the person, oppose the actions. It comes out in our language. It comes out in our body language. We need to heal ourselves and heal the relationships at the same time. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sabrina, for the question. Mark Wolfson has his hand up. Please, Mark.
Yes, I see the February convention vote and the rereading of it, the throwing out of 39 votes and to achieve a certain result, one of which was throwing Marv Sands out of the party and decertifying 2 chapters as a personal attack on those individuals by Seth Woolley. So I think the idea that there was I'm in favor of not, trying to personalize everything, but the bottom line is those people were attacked. I mean, me being one of them, being in the Green Liberty Caucus. So, and my vote was likely thrown out. So I see that as a personal attack, but to achieve a certain result by the leadership that was in power, Seth, Natalie, etc. And so I don't think I can totally square with that. I agree. I don't, as far as, we don't need to, like, at a meeting, say, well, you did that, make it everything personal. Yeah, we should be arguing policy, and we should be more inclusive. So if people don't agree in the party, we can still have them in the party and let them be heard, on a variety of issues, whether it's, you name it, anti-war issues or COVID, vaccines, etc. People should be able to express their points of view, and people should be able to disagree, and we shouldn't be attacking each other and decertifying chapters because of their stance on certain issues. And and demonizing Marv as an anti-Semite, when in fact, if you read what the charges against him, he was anti-Zionist, which I am adamantly anti-Zionist at this point, and think that Israel should not exist, just seeing its behavior. So anyway, that's where I square with this whole thing.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and thank you for taking your hand down. Brian Setzler, you have your hand up. Thank you, Brian. We're going to put the spotlight on you. Go, Brian. You have to unmute.
Yeah, so thanks for putting this together. Thanks for being here. I don't know how productive we shouldn't be, the shenanigans that have gone on at the conventions and stuff are just ridiculous. And I don't know how helpful it is to rehash what happened back in February. I think more important is about what are we going to do going forward. And I agree with what Michael said. I mean, and I'm sorry when you've been disenfranchised and it's a shitty process where a few people have control, and there's nothing about, essentially we're broken, in my opinion. And I've been studying this just so for people who don't know me, I helped start the Green Party 30 years ago, 35 years ago, before my daughter was even born, and was very active. And at one point I just thought, we're going to turn the whole world green. We had so much going on, so much positive vibes. Things were happening. And as soon as we actually became a political party and got recognized as an official party and had ballot access, the mental models of what a political party is and does kicked in hard. And at the same time, the socialists lost their ballot access, joined us, and they wanted to change our structure, which was this decentralized chapters where the action was happening, to a much more hierarchical structure, like the political system, precincts, city, county, state, national. And that was, we had this fight 25 years ago. Trey Smith was from the Socialists and I was from the Greens, and it was just a battle. And at that time, I didn't really fully understood it, but I understood there was something, we didn't want to go down that path. And then when I went and got an MBA in sustainable business about 10 or 15 years ago, and by profession, I'm a CPA. And in my MBA program, I learned a lot about systems thinking, system structures, teams, organizations. And I always kept reflecting on what did I learn? How can I bring this information and wisdom and knowledge back and help the Greens be better? And what I finally concluded this is about 5, 6, 7 years ago now, but Blair we were at a convention down in Lake Oswego, and Blair said, all we need to do to grow the party is XYZ. You can guess what your XYZ is. But the reason things, what he was trying to get going was a snowball. Like, if we just go knock on more doors, invite more people to join, get more candidates, run more offices, win more elections, we'll get this snowball going, positive feedback loop, and we'll grow. And what I learned in my systems thinking thing is when things don't grow, when you're trying to make them grow, there's often what's called a hidden negative feedback that you're not aware of. And so I took about 5-10 minutes, penciled it out, and it became obvious to me that it was our structure, because we were getting lots of great people joining the party. If I look over the last 30 years, there's probably 100 outstanding individuals, activists, leaders that have come in and left so frustrated and pissed off that it's not the people, it's the system. And I've been working for literally 5, 6, 7 years to bring this awareness. And I keep bumping up against, again, these mental models. And then as I brought it to our conventions, I was bumping up against really Natalie and Seth, just would sabotage it for really no reason. And the reason was like fear of, I don't know what it is, but I just want to say, some things, which is one, our structure drives what we do. And I've watched it. I got on the CC back in like 2019. I've really never been on it because I didn't think that was where we needed to be to do things. But I got on there to try to bring leadership and change and ideas. And then COVID hit. It was just, it was chaotic. And it was also so easy for things to break down. But the structure causes, like what Michael was talking about, name calling. In systems thinking, there's a thing called escalation, and that's when you feel like you're going to get destroyed. You up something, and then they up it, and then they up it, and that's what all conflicts are like. Each person feeling like my whole life is at stake here, and if I don't win this, I'll be destroyed. And so they up the game, and then the other side counters, and each side looks at the other as if it's their fault. And yet we all play a role. And the only way out of escalation is to either find something where you both unify around and change the paradigm, or one person or one side unilaterally withdraws and stops escalating. So what I proposed going forward, and I've brought to the convention a couple times, I've brought to the national party, I'd like to write a book about it, but I don't really ever seem to get started on that process, is a model that I've intellectually examined and I just think would be amazing for us is this decentralized model of where you get together in your groups, like we're all in groups and connected, and we connect as cells to make a network of action, and we do things instead of, if somebody decided they wanted to put out a green newsletter right now, the way they would probably go about it is go ask the CC and try to get resources from the CC, and then the CC would have their hands all over it, and you can write about this, but you can't write about that, or blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, that's not the way the world works. And the model I'm talking about is, I forget the technical name right now, it's early, but it's it's how our economy works. It's how almost anything works that grows and thrives. People have the freedom to vote with their dollars, to vote with their attention, to vote with their feet, and they go where the action is. And so I really think that's what we need to do. And in doing that, I really think that as in an informal way, we will come up with the right solution for this state structure. Like we need a very light state structure. The main thing was just, I think when we founded it and for 20 years was like, just make sure we don't lose ballot access. It was required by law, so we have to have that body, but it's meant to have a light touch. It's not meant to oversee everything. They've always called it, from the very beginning when we started this, was about coordinating committee. Like, if I want to do something when this network's going, I know how to get a hold of Dan. I know how to get a hold of Chuck. I know how to get a hold of Michael. I know how to get a hold of you guys. I don't need anybody to coordinate us. We know how to pick up a phone, email, connect. And so I really think it's the solution, because when we're in this structure and kind of, when we're in this kind of new paradigm, we're all free to do essentially what we want to do. If you don't want to connect to a group, let's just say, the fear, we always had this fear from the beginning that, like, what happens if a racist group gets in the party, right? Like the KKK joins the PPP because we have ballot access. Well, first of all,
Brian, I'm going to ask you to.
I'm glad to stop talking and pass on, but I just think the solution, I want to just sum up one thing. Okay. The solution, the problem with our party is the structure. And if we don't change the structural dynamics, this will just give me 30 seconds to sum this up. The problem that we're experiencing, I've been monitoring the Greens for 30 years, both locally and across the country. And every single place, across every single jurisdiction, across all that time, comes back to these same conflicts, and they all result from our structure. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to there's no other hand up. I'm going to just jump in myself and make an observation that Michael Sonnleitner, you observed that the problem is not structural. The problem is that individuals are reacting to other individuals, is what you've essentially suggested. You can correct me on that. And if you see this, if you see what the structural problem is, I don't think our bylaws in the Pacific Green Party are problematic in any which way. I actually like our direct democracy at convention for doing our business. I like the idea of being inclusive. I like the idea of following Oregon law that actually says parties have a law duty to be inclusive. That's in the law, and I could cite it. I've written about it and cited. I made the argument. So, but I think one of the things I'd like us to kind of pay attention to is what are next steps? How do we unify after this rupture? And so anybody here could disagree with my reaction to having my vote thrown out, or no, my vote wasn't in fact thrown out. My vote was counted in the convention. On account that I was on the SEC at the time. But the chapter I'm leading was decertified against. And so that's a painful break for me to deal with. I would look for counsel from people in this group. How can I move forward and kind of lick my wounds and return to the fold if that's the right thing to do? Some people might disagree with that. And how do we set that up? There is a January convention on the schedule. And as part of this, to go back to Michael Sonnleitner's point about, don't name call, just speak to the issues and so on and so forth. We had a convention on May 5th and we sanctioned Natalie and Seth for advancing. So this is that tit for tat, that back and forth that Michael is saying we should not do. Again, I'm looking for guidance and counseling here on how to move forward, how to heal a rupture that's deep in this party, and how to create tolerance and inclusivity. I think that's a critical thing here. Are we being tolerant or are we being intolerant? Okay, Dan has his hand up and then Marv.
Since the subject of structure came up, I just wanted to hopefully briefly mention that we are in a situation now where, regardless of the convention dispute and the dispute over who's on the SCC, the state did not allow the party the chance to resolve that dispute on itself. The state broke, I think it's the first time the state ever did it. They broke the statutory prohibition against the Secretary of State enforcing a party rule. And in so doing, they very badly misread our bylaws and effectively appointed the party secretary as dictator, at least as far as communicating with them is concerned, because they decided the secretary is the only one authorized to communicate or to be the corresponding officer with the state, which effectively gives the secretary control of our ballot access. And that's the ballot access being the important thing, that is what a political party is all about. That's one structural issue that actually does really matter, and the state has inverted it. I tried pro se to litigate this, but I was not successful. To make a long story short, I would not have been able to get, for various reasons, a trial before January, at which time 4 new SCC members will be elected, and who knows what else might happen. So simply reversing the order they made back in May would not have had a whole lot of effect, because that would just affect 3 seats, and now there's going to be 4 new seats. So that probably what's going to happen in January is whoever controls that convention, unless, okay, the question is going to be, how is that convention run, at least as far as who is on the SCC. If it remains under the control of people that want to be in tight control of everything, then it might simply, things might continue as they are. And the state, just to get back to that though, the state has set this precedent where the state now doesn't mind interfering. And that's a whole new dynamic to politics. I've tried to convince people like Dan Meakin from other political parties that that's actually a bad thing and something they should have paid attention to, because we're not really sovereign anymore. But that's been my focus has been on dealing with that now, because that more than the party itself. Even if I go to another party, they might do the same thing. So I guess I'm rambling now, so I'm going to stop.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I'm going to take the spotlight. Let's go to Marv and then Sabrina.
Well, I've been saying this for a long time. This party needs an issue or two that we can agree on that goes beyond these personality issues.
Uh-oh.
So we need an issue or two, and we need candidates. We need people to file and run. If we had candidates, this party would grow exponentially. It would grow suddenly. We need candidates, but we need issue. We need an issue. And this organizational stuff, we can just leave it alone, focus on an issue that we can all unite around. I mean, my God, we've got we've got issues staring us in the face right now. So that's my point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Sabrina and then Mike Beilstein. Take your hand down, please, Marv. If you are, maybe I can do it for you. I think I did it for you. Okay, go ahead, Sabrina.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Sorry, just the phone just rang and I got a little distracted. I just want to say, let us not be confused, and let us not miss the fact that this is about much more than interpersonal dynamics. With these people that, you know, have been in power in the party, that more than this interpersonal phenomenon, what I see or we see is a systematic repression of ideas, you know, that they oppose or are uncomfortable with. And they've been systematically disenfranchising whole chapters and throwing out votes. So it goes way beyond interpersonal interaction. And they do these things when it's inconvenient for them and their positions. And they're abusing their power and the system here in a very undemocratic way. And that's what we have to review and speak about that issue more than, you know, our not getting along as people or, you know, such interpersonal things. This is like an abuse of the whole system. It's corruption.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Put me on the stack somewhere. I can't get my hand.
Charles, you're on stack. Was that Charles or Michael?
Michael.
Okay, Michael, you're on stack after Mike Beilstein. Mike, I'm gonna put the spotlight on you.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if I agree with Brian that we can find any structure which is not going, which is in which the sorts of divisions that we're seeing will not happen. So if there was some workable structure, then I'd agree we should go to workable structure. But I think the structure we have is fine. I think one major problem which was abused in the February convention as this concept of supporting member, and I think that I think any future convention, if we're going to accept the results of it, we have to eliminate this concept of supporting member and say anybody who's a registered green, has equal rights to vote in that convention. And I think we need to have a state leadership that is at least accepted or by a majority of party members. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to communicate with a majority of party members. We have email lists which we can reach some party members. We have mailing addresses, which if we want to make a great effort that costs, on the order of $3,000 to $4,000, we can send a postcard to every registered green. But we're not hearing the the voices, we're not getting the input of more than probably 95% of Greens aren't aware of the leadership problems in the party. They aren't aware of any schism. It's just those people who are paying attention, working in the party. But all those, we have like 8,000 registered Greens, most of whom are just registered Green, and they have they'll vote Green, but they have no connection with the party really. And and so I don't have a solution to this, but I do think that one important thing to do is when we have a state convention, the next one in January, and I think Justin Phillip is intending to organize it, because we don't really have a functional state coordinating committee now. Then when we have a state convention, one of the first things to do would be to eliminate this aspect of the bylaws that defines supporting members. And so I'm very much in favor of that. And I think we also have to get the idea that we accept the result of elections rather than throwing out voters from elections when we don't like the results. And that's, and I think Seth Woolley has really damaged the party. Other people on the coordinating committee that just accepted him doing that, they contributed, to the damage that was done to the party. But I also think that, as well, Seth Woolley has worked for the party. He's done things that have benefited the party, the same as, as I could say that, Dan Pulyu he's worked for the party, so I'm not willing to throw any of these people out. And, especially right now, Justin Phillip and Ken Black, I think, have been essential to keep the party going. Although, I'm sure there's people who would say they're keeping it going in the wrong direction. But I think we need to have some sort of state convention that actually is representative and can elect a coordinating committee which people will accept as believable, and then not once elected, not try to throw them, not being attacking them. So that's I've kind of rambled, but that's I agree with Michael Sonnleitner's assessment that we can't have this internal attacks going on. And we've had in Lynn Benton chapter, we've existed for over 25 years now, and we've had a few kind of crazy people who caused difficulty, but they left, and and we've managed to keep an organization together, in which we've had people elected to office. We've maintained a chapter. We've had meetings. We've run campaigns, and so I think it's possible. I wouldn't go about throwing anybody out of the party. Even I think the most abrasive, unfriendly person in the party is Marvin Sanis, and yet I don't think it makes sense to try to exclude him from the party. He has some minority views, which like supporting Robert Kennedy campaign for president, which I think are crazy, but but I think it's not so crazy that we have to exclude Marvin from the party. Anyway, I don't know if I've said anything useful, but I'm willing to quit and let somebody else say something.
Well, thank you, Mike. And I appreciate your commitment to inclusivity. And I think I am hopeful that our conversation this morning, evening, afternoon, wherever we're almost morning, that we can actually come to some concrete points of solidarity, commitment, and even if I can take away from Mike Beilstein's remark, that you would counsel people to participate in the January convention. Is that a fair position you would take, Mike Beilstein?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to. I don't think you can accomplish anything by just saying that that convention is illegitimate because it's being organized by people who carried out a coup. I think you have to participate in that convention. At that convention, I hope we can elect a leadership which will be respected by all the party.
Thank you, Mike. Dan, will you please unmute?
The January convention will either be a Pacific Green Party convention where the party rules are determined by the supporting members present, as is our precedent and our tradition, or it won't. It'll be another webinar. We've already had several of these in a row where they're just controlled by people who appoint themselves guardians of the process. And this strikes me as an implicitly the same model. And Mike, you used the same words that Luc Bellant did when he intervened, the word leadership. I do not believe that party officers should be appointing themselves to leadership. If the convention is to be genuine, then it has to be controlled by the members, those in attendance. Right. Well, yes, we are the leaders, Brian, but I don't think we need leaders. We need officers who act as servants of the party to pull the levers and push the buttons to do the mechanics and the logistics. That's what they're there for. They're not there to run the conventions. The conventions themselves are an organic living collection, a collective making a decision. That's the question. Is that going to happen in January or not? And I don't intend to dignify. I don't see any reason to dignify it if it becomes plain that it won't. Now, there's time between now and then to try to make sure that we actually do have a real convention this time. And so, just to me, that's what I'm thinking about.
Thank you, Dan. Charles, your hand is up. Oh, Michael Sonnleitner. Yes, you go next, and then Charles. Thank you for the reminder. I'm going to put the spotlight on you. Go, Michael. What are your thoughts?
Sorry, I don't have the hand raising function on my phone easily accessible. First, I would minimize any disagreement that I may have with Brian Seltzer. I think we need to respect not only his participation and institutional memory, but his insights. Structures do make a difference. People in structures make a difference. Relationships among people make a huge difference in terms of how they operate in structures. But structures make a difference. And I think the cultural revolution I'm speaking about needs to include a state central committee, if we have it, that operates with a light touch. I'm using your words, Brian. I think that's extremely important. And to agree with others that have been speaking, the convention in January, if it turns into another webinar, and I found that very disturbing because not only was it controlled by those who created the convention, but it also effectively silenced many of the participants. I complained about this at the time. Among other things, we couldn't see each other. And we need to be open to seeing one another as well as listening to one another. And if it is simply another controlled environment, I will probably bow out of the convention very quickly because the structure of it will not allow for us to learn from one another. That's my bottom line. I think between now and then, since I have a fairly good relationship with Nathalie, I will speak with her personally and encourage her to have a relatively open convention, whether it's in person and or online, but one where we can see one another, listen to one another as we are in this gathering here. And hopefully emphasize at that time the non-productive sort of traditions that we have manifest of engaging in personal attacks. When we are personally attacked, we don't have to personally attack back. That simply reinforces the cycles of dysfunction. So I hope we can exercise that discipline. I hope I can, if I'm personally attacked. Respond by saying, What we need is to freely express ourselves, find common ground, find issues that we can operate on, and work within a structure that includes a culture of respect for all members. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I'll just say that you represented a tactical play. Were and I'm speaking to the people that got hurt. I'm going to say hurt by the theft. That we would return to the fold, as it were, to the January convention, but with the understanding if it conducts as a webinar and doesn't abide by our bylaws rules for open, transparent at convention democracy, well, then en masse, we would all just leave.
Yep.
And then we could come back to the next one and just keep the struggle going. Okay, that's a thought. Charles and then Brian. I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
Okay. I managed to unmute myself. There are several things I was prepared myself to say for the meeting. One, and unfortunately, this gets a little involved in personalities, but I'll try to minimize that in respect to Mr. Sonnleitner. There's more than one Michael. We got a report from Mike Balstein about his discussion with the treasurer and secretary. And one thing clear is that they're quite satisfied with this present situation of the party. In other words, they think it's good riddance that some people have peeled off. And that, well, for one thing, it really reduces the amount of pressure that we can apply. Even if we don't show up for the convention, they think that's fine. Leaves them in control. The big problem I have with a convention that they organize is that who counts the votes? There was a famous saying ascribed, I think, to various dictators that it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes. And we discovered that for ourselves. Personalities again, I guess. So without some sort of commitment that the votes will not be manipulated, I don't think I would even bother to start at a convention. And I don't see any sign that the present officers are likely to come through with that commitment. They can be asked, probably not by me. Something just flew out of my head.
We can come back as the thoughts collect, Charles. But
you.
basically, what you just represented is, and we'll go to Brian and then Mark Willison.
Let's go
You
to Brian now.
represented.
Chuck, let's go to Brian now instead of having the facilitator commentary, please.
All right, let's respect Dan's
Yeah,
wishes.
so-
I think what he said is important, though. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I think everything that's been said here is important. One thing I would recommend, I think maybe for us is what is the process we use at these conventions? Because we've known for a long time we kind of need to improve the process. And when I was on the state coordinating committee, we tried to do it. I don't remember really what we accomplished, but again, I think it needs to be like a task force and with some proposals that come forward where we're committed to the values of participation, voting, transparency in process, and all of that. The reason I really wanted to get on here a second was talking about the structure and how important this stuff is. If everybody remembers, I don't know how many people participated in Occupy Wall Street, but I live downtown, and Occupy Wall Street was just 4 or 5 blocks away, and I was involved with it for a long time. And the way they wanted to make decisions was they had each night, like, you know, people would just stand up and talk. And it worked fine when there were 20, 30, 40, 50 people there. But it was a system that collapsed when all of a sudden there were 2,000 people there. We didn't have enough time to hear everybody speak. You couldn't hear everybody. And I see the same kind of problems a little bit with our conventions when you say, like, what I hear Dan saying is like, well, the people at the convention should make the rules. That's fine when we have 40 or 50 people there. I think that that's legitimate. But all of a sudden, when you've got, if we were to actually grow, I think that breaks down when you get 500 people there. How do you manage that kind of chaos? And so, again, that's where the structure, our structure, when I've looked at our structure, the negative feedback loop that we have is as we grow, the frustration with the party goes up and people leave. And so for that reason, we don't grow. And we've got to find a way out of that dynamic. And my solution, I think, gets us out of that. But I'll leave it there. I think we should create a task force where, you know, people who want to think about how to run a good convention, regardless of size, come up with some ways to do it.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Mark Wolfson. And then we can go back to Charles.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack here, but I wanted to try to elaborate on a few things. There have been some attacks on us, or Dan and our group, Pacific Green Party websites. First off, there was somebody that was faking emails, claiming to be us, you know, and sending them to the press and to the Secretary of State, and just outrageous, you know, saying outrageous things. And then our website was bombarded by some bot. We got hundreds of registrations for this conference from, you know, emails. We get like 3 or 4 from the same email, then it would go to another email, and all the information, the name, the address was all just a bunch of letters, and then it was all from the town was Zimbabwe, or the state, you know, it's like, or the country, I guess. But anyway, so that was kind of bizarre. So there's a real effort, I think, it's more than just personal attacks. There's somebody that's really attacking, in terms of they're willing to go be very underhanded in how they do it too. And then I should just say, to elaborate on what Marv was saying, as far as an issue to get behind. Well, we did have an issue to get behind, or we do have an issue still to get behind. At the February convention, Dan introduced a resolution to add genocide into the Israel's committing genocide into the party platform, and we did that. We all agreed on that. I think the issue of Gaza and the destruction of Gaza is a major issue that Jill Stein took on. You know, I joined the party years ago because of people like Jill Stein and Ralph Nader, who've really highlighted what's going on there. And so I think we do have an issue, but the problem is when there's other issues that are pertinent, it seems like all of a sudden, no, that's not okay. You know, and I should remind Mike Beilstein that RFK got 1.5% of the votes in Oregon. He got the highest of any independent or third party candidate. And that should tell you something. And before Jill Stein entered the race back in 2023, I was ready to support RFK on many issues until he opened his mouth about Israel and condemned the Palestinians. But because I agree with him on vaccines, and I agree with him on what he said about the war in Ukraine. So I think, and if the Green Party is going to grow, they're going to have to look at the fact that he got more votes than us, and go like, why is that? Because if we want to remain this marginalized party, you know, we can continue to just say, well, you know, we're gonna condemn what Butch Ware said about, you know, biological males competing against females in sports, and etc. And we can be this politically correct version of the Democrats, or we can branch out and realize that there's a lot of views that need to be heard, and a much bigger tent can be formed by, bringing in people with a lot of dissenting views in society versus trying to like say, well, you're not politically correct enough to be in the Green Party. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Charles, and I'm going to jump in. I'm going to put my hand, I'm going to ask Dan actually to respond to Charles's concerns that as people in leadership in Green Party are happy with status quo, and give us some tactical, strategic perspective on how to deal with that. But Charles, your hand is up. You collected your additional thought, I believe.
Yes. And it's purely tactical. It's not clear to me how we can move forward, but I think one thing we should be prepared for is to hold a convention in January of our own, because there's a provision, because there is no SEC to organize a convention in January. And there's a history of failing to accomplish things from the groups that are presently running or attempting to run the party. I assume they're pretty overwhelmed. So I think I think it's quite possible that they will simply fail. There won't be a convention, and the bylaws call for somebody to hold an emergency convention to reconstitute the party. So that's something I think it may well not happen, but it's something I think we should be prepared for. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Dan, would you chime in now? I've asked you to respond to Charles's concern. I wasn't aware that we don't have a standing SEC, and he just posed that the convention may not even happen, in which case an emergency call would be appropriate. But Dan, what do we do?
I don't know either, but in my opinion, the most important thing is to find out, yes, whether this January convention, if it is to be held at all, will be held under our party rules of the convention attendees controlling the process. And I think it behooves us to try to find out. Obviously, if I go up and ask them personally myself, I'm not going to find out much, but it just, the membership basically can suss that information out from any news that they put out or conversations they have.
Okay.
But the one other thought that I had, and this is very important to me, if Justin and Ken, who voted to throw out my chapter's votes in February of last year, and then working with Seth, told the state that they were in charge and that these are the correct results. They lied to the state. I'm wondering if there's a chance that they might tell the truth now that the people they told the state were the party's officers have fallen apart, apparently, and it's gone dysfunctional. Maybe it's worth considering whether there's a chance that they might contact the state and say, well, oh, sorry, we were mistaken. These people are SCC members. Then we could run the convention. It's not likely. But if the position that they took, that the tampered result last February was the real SCC, and that it's discredited by the fact that it collapsed so quickly. And again, we're strategically, if we want to actually have an effect and be recognized by the state of Oregon, we have to go through Justin, because he is the party secretary, and in the state of Oregon's opinion, the party secretary is the corresponding officer. So they are going to believe anything he tells them.
So what did we do with that, Dan?
I don't know. And that's why I'm hoping that other people might come up with ideas.
So
Because
Dan, that means to me that we need to start interacting with Justin because everything becomes a matter of public discourse. So that sounds like an excellent idea if we create an avenue and a methodology strategizing that.
it might work.
Okay, my hand is up. I'm going to make a suggestion that from this meeting, we identify, and maybe it's going to be Mike Beilstein, who will communicate with Justin. Because it sounds like Justin is an officer, or he's not an officer, he's a secretary without a steering committee, in effect. Is that
That's an
a fair?
officer. The state considers that an officer.
Okay.
And they don't know or care that it's appointed by the SCC.
Okay, so Justin Phillip is in fact the last officer standing in the Pacific Green Party of Oregon. Is that a fair characterization?
Him and Ken and whoever's officially on the SCC that are not currently doing anything. I think that's
Who's officially on the SCC still?
Amy. I haven't checked recently, but last I looked, it was Amy Sachs, Mary Jedry, Felipe, Laura, and their new guy, Greg Bourget.
So then this group could issue an advisory statement to Justin, copy those people, and make a demand that the convention in January not be webinar, that it follow our open, transparent program, that voting not be opaque, hidden behind OPA vote, counted over 7 days and issued findings. I mean, we could do that. That's a possibility for us. We can do it in a way that doesn't isn't naming names and being nasty and snarly, and we can be polite and kind and gracious and all those virtuous things. What do people think about that? Mike Beilstein, please. I'm going to put the spotlight on you. Yeah, because you're the one who has relations with these guys.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there's some other conversation going on in my home, so I'll try to speak up, but
Okay.
doesn't overcome it. But I think this opposition to the webinar format, I can understand that. And I don't like it. I at the conventions that were done with that, I would have liked to be able to see people. The other aspect about that is shutting down the chat, which I think was a very smart move. So I guess because even in this meeting, to follow what's going on, you have to listen to people and read the chat at the same time. And so I see the chat as it's functioning in this meeting right now is just side talk. It's talk that's going on outside the main meeting, and it's distracting people. So I think the idea of shutting down chat for a meeting is, which was done. And I can see the problem with that because it limits discourse, but at the same time, having the chat going on at the same time as the main meeting is a problem. The other thing is I do like the idea of people being able to vote absentee. If you cannot attend the meeting, I think you ought to have the ability to review the meeting and vote later. So I do think it's, to have anybody who's registered allowed to vote is good. I don't think people have to show up at the meeting to have a vote. I think that's just limits participation. So I think these are things that people are shutting down chat and allowing absentee votes to occur after the session has ended. I think those are things which people are saying are undemocratic, but I see them as essential for having a functional meeting. I do agree that getting rid of the webinar format where people can't see other people, they can't even know who is attending or the number attending. I think that's I'd say that's a demand that we ought to forward to Justin or whoever organizes the January convention.
Okay, I'll just make an observation. I'll take the spotlight off of you, Mike, that our rules, we have rules, Mike, and this issue about putting the vote out to whomever is actually against our bylaws. And Natalie has had 5 years of opportunity to change the rules. They never approached a rule change through the normal course of doing a bylaws. They've insinuated this anybody can vote, but they've agreed that anybody who votes must register, which is an interesting concession to make. So you still have to register. You don't have to attend a meeting. You don't have to listen to any argument. You can just basically vote as you're told through a text message. And that's where I think staying true to our bylaws is something that is worth doing. And if the business of the party is important, then register, come into the meeting, come in and say hi. Maybe you don't stay for the whole thing. We weren't strict about that. So let's go to Dan.
Yeah, whether or not to do things like absentee voting is it is, as Chuck says, under our bylaws and traditions, a convention decision, a party decision that's made by the majority of those present. And a lot of the past history of conflict is rooted in fighting over that, people that didn't want that to be the case. The chat that annoys people so much, that developed in the dynamic of conventions that started to be controlled top down, people controlling the mute button and controlling who could talk and when, and so the fighting and the dynamic of that fighting, people would take it to the chat. And of course that's annoying, but the basic problem there is that the conflict is happening, and there's the fighting. Look, on this call, we've got plenty of chat, but I don't think any of it is negative. Nobody's fighting each other. No one's using it as a side channel to snipe at each other while someone else has the microphone. So that's a symptom. The cause is that our processes are just not working. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Charles, your hand's up. Unmute.
It has occurred to me that one of the problems with Zoom, it's very convenient for holding conventions or meetings of any sort, including this one, without people having to travel. But the problem is that it's highly centralized. There's a host who controls the terms of the meeting, can shut people off, or just end the meeting. The variety of things the host can do. And that seems to be, as far as I can tell, that's built into the system. So Brian mentioned the possibility of a task force for another purpose. Maybe we should have people looking for other remote meeting systems less centralized. That was my.
Okay, there is other meeting technology. That's correct. So Greg McKenzie, are you trying to share something? You're muted. What are people thinking now? We've been going for an hour plus, and I think there's some agreement that we ought to engage and with the next convention, and that would mean communicate an intention to participate and an intention or request, a demand that the rules be followed. Now, what rules we would follow obviously are up for some debate right now. People don't agree with some of the rules. I mean, and the elephant in the room right here is that one of my demands going into a January convention would be the original demand of the February convention, that Green Liberty Caucus be represented on the Green Party website. This is the thing that absolutely blew Natalie and Seth into a state of hysterics. They could not tolerate that, and they went to great lengths to preclude it. So now I'd like maybe Michael Sonnleitner can help us here. How am I, as an aggrieved party, as an activist who advances policies that others, that I insist are completely in line with our green values, but others don't like. Nevertheless, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just keep my mouth shut and say, okay, I'll suck it up here and just, smother my passions and where I think we can grow our party? What do we do? How do I navigate this? And then Sabrina, if you're willing, Michael, I'm going to put the spotlight.
Chuck, I personally believe that to do nothing is the worst. To be silent is the worst. That is the most violent option. That is one that harms not only our self-respect, but the respect that others may have for us. So I can't tell you how to express yourself, but I do think you must. In a tactical kind of positive sense, I think it sounds wise that Justin be approached by those who have some relationship with him to express the concerns we have shared here, particularly that this not be a webinar format and that people be seen and heard respectfully at the convention. Frankly, if those requests are not met, I will not stay at the convention very long. I mean, withdrawal is an option. For my part, I'll speak with Nathalie and one or two others with whom I have some reasonable relationship and express that concern. It's not an ultimatum to say that if these basic conditions for an open convention are not met, I will choose not to participate. And I know that I'm not alone. We can resist. We don't have to resist with personal attacks. We can resist in other ways. Again, I think it's important for us to be who we would want others to be and not model behavior that they may be expressing. We need to be better than that. And I think in the long term, perhaps in the shorter term, that will have a positive impact. I encourage participation in January. I encourage communication between now and January with those who may be having a hand in organizing this thing. It's not clear who's doing it. And as we become more clear, perhaps another gathering like this one may be appropriate between now and January. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Michael. Sabrina, your hand's up. Please go.
Yes, I was going to say it's an excellent point that you made, Chuck, that your chapter, our chapter of Green Liberty has not been included on the party website, and neither has the long-standing Lane chapter been included on the website. And this is very undemocratic and repressive of those in control of the party. So this is, again, way beyond personal attacks. It's a systematic effort on the part of those in control, to repress ideas, and expression of part of chapters even. So, it's a very, anyway, it's so glaring and wrong. And yeah, we have to figure out, I guess, a structure. If we can't have people that are not going to abuse the system, in positions of power in the party, we have to have some kind of structure where, that cannot be abused somehow. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Sabrina. Suzia, and then Charles.
Oh, that happened fast. What I want to say is, and I'm not sure where this fits, but this happened not just in Oregon. This happened all over the country to the Green Party. So half of the Green Party is disenfranchised. And I'd like to know how we could put the whole party back together, frankly. And I think that our problem is reflected in their problem and vice versa. So I think there's some wisdom in what other groups have done. And we might even be leading the way as far as I can tell.
Okay, thank you, Suzia. Charles? Oh, you're muted.
Had another minor point, and I've already forgotten that. I was listening to Suzia. I'll check back later.
Okay. You have to write, you need a piece of pad of paper to.
Yeah, I would help.
Um,
I'm not at a desk.
okay, so Mike Beilstein has left the meeting. I don't know why. I know that my insistence in advancing the Green Liberty Caucus is a major point of irritation and contention. And my concern is that the party develops the cultural shift that I think Michael Sonnleitner is looking for, which is a cultural shift into tolerance and not intolerance against people who are advancing argument that we disagree with. Now, and I don't, and all I think a model is that the Green Party should become a kind of united front. And apparently there's a distinction between being a united front from being the popular front. And in the united front, people wear their politics frankly and out front. If you're a Catholic, you would be a Catholic radical. If you're an atheist, you would be an atheist. If you're a Marxist, you carry your Marxist. You carry your ideology out front, but the people unite against a common enemy. And in our case, it's going to be what? The plutocracy, the military industrial complex, the class that has ruined the planet. And so that goes back to Marvin Sands's point. But what I'm looking for is the possibility that Natalie and Seth will suspend their, what I think is a form of hysteria, irrational opposition, and to such an extent that they actually broke the rules in order to get their way. So Michael, in your conversation with Natalie, we understand that she's alienated from Seth, the person that was her ally in this thing. So there's a lot to navigate here. It could be that a January authentic convention could lead us into a united front with the understanding that there are these oddballs, Chuck Fall and his Green Liberty group, okay, but we don't kick people out for, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't agree with it, but we tolerate. And that would be the cultural shift that I would hope we could accomplish. Dan Pouliou and then Mark Wolofson. I'll put the spotlight on you, Dan.
Okay. Speaking in general terms of realpolitik, our party had a major purge and now an organizational collapse, the officer cast, in addition to an intervention by the state. So there's kind of a power vacuum here. And that can be an advantage, although, of course, nominally the power is still all in Justin and Ken's hands because the state recognizes them. In this kind of situation, I've learned, I'm a strategy gamer, and I've learned the hard way to not focus, not get target fixated on, not focus over much on risk and what can go wrong, because then you can miss opportunities. we do have an opportunity here to rally the membership to simply take action in enough numbers that it will simply be irresistible that yes, we want to put an end to all this. Let's have an honest convention. Boom, it happens. And that may require a lot of just back channel conversation with the people involved and say, well, yes, we're not going to kick anybody out. I'm fine with that. We're not going to reactivate the recriminations, turn the convention. I hope not to turn the convention into another ideological death spiral with a struggle over what the party is for. But just to repair it structurally. That's an opportunity. It might happen, it might not. I can't say I'm optimistic. So I just wanted to ask Michael if he thinks that that there might be enough momentum to. He mentioned meeting again, basically before January. Should we tentatively plan on just regrouping and talking again in about a month, say in December, and just to figure out where we're at? That's all.
Thank you, Dan. Let's go to Mark Rolifson, and I think another reconvening of this conversation is a good idea. We can make a date for that tonight, this morning. Mark, go for it. Putting the spotlight on you.
I would just like to invite Greg McKenzie and Paige Crammond and Stephen Kiss to speak, because we haven't heard from them. If they want to speak, they should raise their hand and speak, because we haven't heard from them what their thoughts are. But I think we're a party in crisis, and it's unfortunate because I think we could end up just becoming smaller and smaller and more irrelevant rather than growing our numbers, which I think we should be doing, and people should be. I guess I was watching a lot of media attention about Jill Stein and social media attention, and the Democrats were so worried that she was going to be the spoiler, and she was getting a lot of headlines, and there was obviously different groups that were supporting her, Muslims voters in Michigan and students, but somehow it didn't really resonate as far as a big election result. And I think we have to ask ourselves what is the way forward, and is there a hope for this party to grow? And unfortunately, the Oregon voters didn't pass ranked choice voting, which is unfortunate because that would really move the needle forward for third parties. But we kind of have to make this work if we want the party to survive. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mark. Let's go to Stephen, and then Greg McKenzie will come to you. Greg, you're at the Lynn Benton Group. Be good to hear from Stephen. Go for it. Unmute. You're still muted.
Hello, everybody. Oh, okay. So, yeah, now I've really just been enjoying the conversation, and I enjoy the chats. I enjoy the chats of adding information into the conversation, and I like how Dan addressed that, saying that we were basically, it's up to us to filter out the noise, and when we're not fighting with each other, the chat is maybe a positive distraction rather than a negative one. And I would say that from the beginning of this process for me for the last 4 years, and interacting with a lot of patriotic and civic-minded individuals, speak directly to Mark, that comment about the problem with this tiered voting process is it's very manipulatable, and we've seen that ourselves with the what happened in our party when Natalie backed off without party approval and swung the vote towards with that deal she made with Kotek. So I understand why it's done politically, and I see that the Green Party is being used mostly to basically filter, people over to the Democratic side. And Natalie has said that during the meeting, is that funds are being raised, and so we don't come up with our own candidates, and then we go with another party. We may as well be Democrats at that point. And so, the tiered voting system is manipulable because you simply just remove a candidate And when you got the numbers down, if you have a system that automatically tiers it all the way up, you pull some choice people out. They were involved in an election, and next thing you know, you've swung the vote one way or the other. And I'm more, as Chuck constantly reminds us, I'm into transparency. I'm into some sort of integrity. If we don't have integrity as a people running our own systems in our government, then we don't have integrity as a culture and as a country, right? And as a society. And we're seeing that happen all around us with the lack of integrity from the top down to the bottom. And we have to start here. We have to start with ourselves. And I think the idea of breaking into groups as task force and, working together, then you take the leader of those task force and you work them together and you create a sliding understanding between the upper leadership and the lower leadership, providing more of a real democratic and representative constituency. We're as an awareness of people who speak and share thoughts, and then we come up with the best solutions, which I think is the whole idea. So thank you for inviting me to come on and speak, Mark, and those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Greg McKenzie from Lynn Benton, what are your thoughts? Please share.
Well, I found this very interesting, and I've been involved for a couple of years in the Green Party, and I think that this last election leaves a lot of people looking for alternatives and looking for some other way. The Democrats did a pretty poor job, and I'd like to see the Greens grow, and they need to grow by getting more younger people involved. Primarily, I'd be very interested in working on that, and from this meeting, maybe some more women involved, and that's all I have to say. I'm not sure how to deal with the particular organizational details, so I'm going to pass on and go see the folks at the rally. But I'll come back sometime and see how you're all doing.
So you're leaving the meeting now, Greg? Is that what you're communicating?
Unless somebody wants something more from me.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Greg.
Yeah.
Yep.
I forgot you had been to Russia. When was that?
You forgot I was what?
That you had been to Russia before. When was that?
When? It was years ago, like 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah. What was it like back then?
Well, we should talk about this offline, I think.
All right.
Basically, I did a tour where I took a dance group of contra dancers to go dance with Russians without speaking the language. You can hold Russians in your arms and dance with them. And it was a citizen diplomacy effort. And I did 3 of those tours.
Wow.
And I think it's one of the more significant things I've done in my life. So anyway.
Thank you, Greg. And please remain dialed in and participate. I think there is going to be another meeting of discussion about January. So I'm going to suggest that we wrap up our roundtable. And I have some quick question. When is the January convention? Does anybody have a hard date for that?
25th is what they say, but that doesn't make it a hard date. They could change it.
Okay. They've identified the 25th. We have this rule about getting agenda items in 30 days before. December 21st is a Saturday. We could agree to have another roundtable conversation, and we would have any agenda items. I can tell you my agenda item is going to be a repeat of something I've been asking for 4 or 5 years, and that is that Green Liberty be represented and Lane Chapter be represented on the website. I mean, that's going to be an ask, and it feels like old material, or an agenda item to recognize the raw results of the February convention. and a dismissal of the election committee. So these are some, I guess, questions we need to answer as our group going forward. How do we approach January? Do we go with an agenda, or do we just ask for a good, honest convention? I can't go in there without asking for some justice personally. But should we make a commitment that we're going to have another meeting on December 21st? Does that sound like a good idea? Or should we do it sooner? The 14th of December is the Saturday before the 21st. We could do it on the 14th and give ourselves more time. And that might be the better date. Any thoughts on our next rendezvous by Zoom to keep our roundtable going about repairing the party? Charles,
December 14th sounds good to me.
okay, I agree with, that's my gut telling me, let's push it up. Let's have another roundtable event, 11 o'clock, to talk about repairing our party. Charles, your thoughts? Your hand is up.
Two things. Yeah, I would agree with the 14th. Let's give ourselves a little leeway, rather than on the due date. And I remembered what I was thinking about before because it's directly relevant to your ask. We were careless and allowed control of the electronic communications of the party to be extremely centralized. I think Natalie was in charge of everything: the website, and the emails, everything. That's not a good situation for her. I think she was overloaded, and it's certainly not a good situation for the party. So it's something, basically, I'm not quite sure what to do about it. I can't do any of that stuff. But it should be a party goal to have control of those dispersed. More than one person has the keys to the website, and somebody else altogether is in charge of the email, and whatever else are party communications. Those should be scattered around. Otherwise, you have centralization as a formula for the kind of problems we've been having.
Absolutely. This is, I'll just tell you for the record, I've asked, I don't even want to rehash the record, but yes, we do need to expand the ranks of people who have keys to the kingdom, as it were. And just for the record, if I'm understanding things correctly, Natalie has been, in effect, kicked out of the Nation Builder website. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was represented in an email I saw. Dan, your hand is up, please.
First, are there any blocks to the 14th at 11 as the next roundtable? At least amongst those still here.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, no blocks. Second, regarding the centralization of the websites, yes, Charles is absolutely right about that. That has contributed to the dynamic of top-down control, and that preceded Natalie. Actually, when I first joined the party, I found out that Trisha Driscoll was in control of all the pacificgreens.org and the Google Drive and everything, and had help. She put me in charge of a few things, but then I found out within a few months that was not really accepted by everybody. In particular, Joe Rowe was quite angry about that and stormed out of the convention when I said things that implied that I had more authority than I did. It's not good to have these things in one hand. Currently, Brian has left the call, but if you look at the campaign finance of the Pacific Green Party of Oregon PAC, they've been spending about $80 a month on password management. And I don't know who is, I don't know who, it's a password management company called Bitwarden, and normally they charge like $4 to $6 a month. So there's some really elaborate thing going on there that has it's obscure to me who actually is even in control of that, because it may be behind a password management system. But in any case, Charles is absolutely right. This shouldn't be centralized, and once it becomes centralized, then that's when problems happen. Of course, we have Chuck and I and Mark are running an alt OregonGreenParty.com website, and we're trying not to do it that way. So anyone on this call that wants access to the blog, the website itself is just a thing, like a placeholder. This is a Green Party website, and we make the blog available to anyone that's interested in editing and posting the content, which I think is as open as centralized as something should be. It should be accessible to all interested party members. Of course, it hadn't really taken off like that because of how things played out during this year. But anyhow, it still exists. And we still have about $400 in our miscellaneous pack to do this, and that it's not really too important at the moment, but that's
Thank
all.
you, Dan.
Yep.
Any final thought? Okay,
Thanks for showing up, everyone.
Yes, so we're just going to end the recording in a moment here, and then this can be shared out. We made a decision for a December 14th continuation to plan, and there will be conversations between now and then that people can bring back to this roundtable conversation around healing the rupture in the Green Party. Again, I'm Chuck Fall. Dan has been a key leader in helping us hold ourselves.
You said that word again, leader.
Okay, so Dan's not a leader. Dan's a monad floating through space,
I don't want
making remarks.
Never mind.
Okay, we're going to formally end this, if I can find my maybe someone can help me how to end here's where you end. Where's the recording is ending right here. So we're ending our recording. Stop recording.